Welcome back to this clown's garage. In this video I will be converting this 91 Camaro from carburetor to multi-port fuel injection, which will be controlled by MegaSquirt. I also have a video on how to convert a carburetor to a TBI, specifically a Holly Sniper, and I will put that link in the description below. In this car I will make a custom sending unit with 2 Racetronix pumps in the gas tank and use all the stock routing for the fuel lines and the wiring. This setup will be able to handle over 1,000 horsepower with forced induction. So let's begin. Alright, now I have the car in the air. What we're going to do is we're going to drop the gas tank. We're going to disconnect the exhaust. This heat shield's got to come off. This panhard bar's got to come off. We're also going to hang the rear end a little bit, and the gas tank should come out. So I'm going to go ahead and take the exhaust off now. Take the hangers off. Out she comes. Okay, now we're taking the heat shield off. These are 7mm. This whole thing comes right out. We're going to take the panhard bar off. This 18mm on this side and 21 on the other side. Alright, so we're just going to hang this over here on one side. Alright, now the track bar on top. Now this side of that bar, this is 15mm. And that comes right off. I put a jack underneath the rear end to hold it up. And I'm going to take the shocks off now. That's a 7/8. And now the other side. Okay, now I'm going to disconnect the fuel line. This is a deadhead system, meaning I only have one line, one feed gas line going to the front. So all I got to do is just cut this here. The rest is the vent and the charcoal canister. And one was the return line. So now I just go ahead and cut this line, and I have a catch container underneath to catch any gas that comes out. Disconnect the wiring harness for the sender and the fuel pump. Okay, now I'm going to lower the rear end a little bit. Be careful. The hose over here for the brake line, make sure that doesn't get stressed, and the springs might pop out a little bit, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of clearance by dropping this rear end a little bit. And that should be good. Now you can also do this on the ground, so we're good. Alright, now that we got the rear end dropped, up here holding the gas tank we have 2 straps. One over here and one over there, and there's 16mm bolts at the end of those. They're right there, that's one of them, and that's the other one. So I'm going to use 2 big extensions with a 16mm socket and drop those while somebody's holding the gas tank. You can also put a jack underneath that gas tank if you don't have anybody helping you. But you have to be very, very careful doing this. Actually, people lost their lives doing this, so be very careful. I'm going to drop the gas tank. Alright, keep a fire extinguisher handy when you do this. Alright, don't forget to take the gas cap off also. So this should come right out. very careful. All right. Your neck.
Grab that neck.
Just gotta twist it and turn it around up there. Okay, I'm gonna take the fuel line out. Alright, I'm just going to cut this rubber line that goes from the hard line to the mechanical fuel pump. And once I do that, I can just take the hard line out. Alright, now I'm just going to yank this steel line out of here. Force it out. Who's your clown daddy? That's right. Okay, now we're going to take this dash 6 line off the mechanical pump. Okay, now there's a 14 millimeter bolts over there on the mechanical pump. Take those off. Now do the other side. The whole pump should come right out. Take the plate off. Grab a pry bar. Pop that off. Now take the fuel pump push rod out. Okay, now we're going to drain the antifreeze. So that's a 5/16 hose clamp there that goes on the water pump. Alright, spin it to break the seal. And now this should come right off. Take the upper radiator hose off. Okay, now I took all the wires off the distributor. Number 1 is right here, number 1 cylinder. And as you can see, the rotor is kind of points to number 1. It needs to go a little more counterclockwise here. So we're going to turn the motor a little bit more counterclockwise until the mark on the harmonic balancer points to 10 degrees before top dead center on the timing tab. And then all we have to do when we put the new distributor in is make sure the rotor is pointing to the number 1 cylinder on the distributor cap. Now we already bumped the engine over with the number 1 spark plug out with our finger on the hole, and we felt pressure. Once we felt pressure and we saw the line on the balancer come close to the timing tab, the 0 mark, we knew that this rotor was pointing to the number 1 cylinder. And we were on the compression stroke at top dead center. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn the engine counterclockwise to turn that rotor a little bit counterclockwise until I line up the mark to 10 degrees before top dead center. And we're good. Take the throttle cable off. Pop the TV cable off. Just like that. Now take the carburetor nuts off. Last but not least, take this vacuum booster line off. Pop this off. And the whole thing comes right off. Unhook the distributor. It's a 9/16 for the distributor hold down. Now pop this bitch out, just like that. So I turn these over to face the wall. These are two sensors, one for the old pressure gauge and one for my old pressure warning light. So now I'm just going to take all these intake manifold bolts off. So I'm going to take these off. Okay, now to pop this bitch loose, I got a pry bar here, resting it on this accessory bracket here. Oh yeah, listen to that bad boy crack loose. Move all this stuff out of the way. Alright, so now we're going to take this whole sending unit out. The first thing you should do is blow it out with compressed air, so when you pop this out, nothing falls into the gas tank. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so what you got to do here is you got to use a brass punch and a rubber mallet, because this doesn't make sparks, so you don't want to blow yourself up. Also make sure you do this outside or where somewhere it's very well ventilated. So there's tabs on here on the inner ring. What you gotta do is you gotta whack it this way and it'll pop out from this retaining ring over here. So there's one tab here. Now I'm gonna put that right there and smack it this way. Just like that. And now that ring is loose, you can just grab this whole thing and it pops right out. Also there's an O-ring here. Make sure you put that on back. Also when you put this back in, and you're supposed to twist it and turn it, it comes out. Alright, so this is what I'm putting in the car. I'm putting twin Walbros in it. They will both be 255 liter per hour pumps, but they actually flow close to 280. Combined, these two pumps are good for 1,000 horsepower with forced induction at the flywheel. One pump will be on all the time. The second pump only activates when the computer senses boost. I will also wire in a switch to turn on the second pump manually. So this is everything that you get from them. It's the pump, the socks. You don't need pre-filters. These are good enough. This is the bracket that holds the two pumps in place. Teflon coated wire that is submersible in the gas tank, and they have to be Teflon coated. And these are also tinned. I bought two rubber mounts for the bottom. You could also go this route. This is Oderker clamps with Teflon lines. This is how the factory does it. And these you have to heat up to put them on. I'm not going to go this route. I'm going to put a -6 adapter directly on these and run all -6 braiding into a Y, into an 8. That's how I'm going to do mine. And you can also get the relays from them and the fuse holders. So I'm going to go ahead and now modify the stock sending unit to put the stuff in. Now this was over here. I'm taking that off. This was for the feed to the carburetor. This was the TBI car, so the fuel pump was over here. The actual TBI pump sat over here somewhere. So that's where you want the new pumps to sit. So they're close to the bottom of the tank. Okay, now I'm going to take this off. Okay, now there's a piece of metal here. You just want to grind that off a little bit to slide that bracket on. So all you gotta do is just, like I showed you, twist it and it pops right off. Should be good. Alright, so you pretty much want this even with this return tube down here, and it actually fits pretty good. Now I'm going to put this on later. I'm going to go ahead now and drill this stuff out and put the fittings and everything on here. Alright, so this is the plan. This line is what holds everything over here. It's going to hold the pumps. That's the factory return line, the 5/16 line. So we're going to keep that. We're also keeping this 3/8 line over here at the end as a vent. And if you follow this along here, I got a little breather at the end of this. So that's going to act like our vent. And the rest of these lines are going to be cut. This 3/8 line, this 3/8 line are going to cut because I don't like the way this is kinked over here. And we're going to put these bulkhead connectors in here. This is -6 or equivalent to 3/8 tube. So I'm going to put one here, one here. I'm going to drill this out and put a -8 bulkhead for the return. And I'm going to drill a small hole over here and put the wires through with the grommet, then JB weld that shut. So that's the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, now I'm going to take this factory wire connector off. Pop that out. Comes off. And this should pop off. Just like that. Grab my dikes again. I love my pair of dikes, but the problem is they don't love me back. And pop this off, pull the tabs the other way. And this should pop out. So that's what it looks like in there. Do the same thing, try to grab it with my dikes and try to wiggle this thing off. Just like that. Okay, now I gotta cut these two lines. Go ahead and do that. Don't forget your safety glasses, boys and girls. Let's do this. Alright, so this is going to come out. Slide this out of here. That's out. Cut this little tab off. A little bit of a change of plan here. I'm also going to cut this off here. This is the pipe that holds, that's going to hold the pumps together. Get this out of the way for now. Cut that. Okay, now we're going to cut this last tube off here. Alright, so that's what we're left with. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to knock this over and I'm going to MIG weld this shut. Alright, so that welded it shut and also reinforced it, so it's pretty strong now. Alright, so the original plan now was to put the 8 over here, use this for the wires for the pumps, and put a 6 and a 6 bulkhead here. But it looks like we might not have the space, so what we might have to do is take the vent tube out of here, put it here, and just put 1 6 over there, and this way we have a lot of space. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to drill these out to see if I could fit these in. Okay, so this is the bulkhead that's going in. I got my dowel caliper to the diameter I need, and I went slightly bigger on here. I put the tape where I need to stop. I'm going to start drilling this. Alright, so what we're going to do now, there's not enough space here to squeeze these nuts over here. So, and to put this one here. So we're pretty much going to put the dash shade here, the return, and the 2 6s on the sides over here. This will give us the most real estate to move these around. And we're going to move the vent from here to here. So that's the plan. And this is going to be used for the wires. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna make a new line. This is a 3/8 copper nickel line, so this will never rust. I'm gonna put it in here and follow the path of the stock vent line and make this my new vent line. So all I have to do now is cut this and shape this and put it in there. And bend her over. Alright, so this is all bent. So this is good for now. I'm going to cut this off and put this over there. And cut her off. I'm going to take this off. And in the hole it goes. And she fits. That also fits on this side. Okay, so what I did here basically what I did here was I flattened this out so I could put the nut on it. We have a flat surface for the nut. So we're good. Alright, so that's what it's gonna look like. And now we just gotta cut one more hole for this last 6AN bulkhead. Alright, now that's where we want the other bulkhead to go, right there. So I'm gonna put a punch to make a hole right in the middle. Alright, so that's pretty much everything. I drilled out this a little bit. There were 2 tabs here. I just reamed it out so the tabs are gone. Now I'm going to go over all this with a cookie so everything's nice and flat. Same thing on the other side of this. Alright, so that's tight. I put that on there. I test fit this in the gas tank and everything clears. Make sure when you put the pump on here, it clears this lever or else you can get false readings. So now we're ready to mount all the fittings and stuff on this. Alright, so now these are the fittings that we're going to put on there. We're going to use these dash 6s that I was showing on camera before. These are dash 6 bulkhead connectors. And these are designed to go through a firewall or a sending unit like we have over there, the cap, or through a fuel cell. And these are 90-degree bulkhead connectors. This is part number for that, 661253. And we're also using the dash shade for the return. And that's that part number. And to make all these work, you gotta buy the nuts for these. These are bulkhead nuts. These are dash 8 nuts. And these are the dash 6 nuts. And I also have Teflon washers here. And this is the hose we're gonna use to submerge down into the gas tank. This is a Teflon line hose. And that's the Russell part number for that. Everything we're using is Russell. And if you use these, you got to use the power steering fittings for them. You have to use the fittings for that hose. All right, so we're going to use the copper nickel line that we bent. That goes there. That's our vent. Okay, one thing to know with these bulkhead connectors, the straight ones, you have to use 2 nuts to hold it in. The angled ones, you only use 1 nut. Or else if you put 2, you're not going to have enough room here for the ending flare over here. The washer on top. I'm also putting a Teflon washer underneath too. And the nut. Okay, now there's like a little step here. These washers go in and sit. Put that one in. Do the -6. Now fit a grommet. Stick it in the hole. Right, Brianna?
Oh yeah. Smells like gas too.
Those are for the wires. Okay, now this is very important when you put these Walbro pumps in. This is a vapor purge port, right there, that hole. And they're located in different locations on different pumps. And if you block this, it could result in slow or no priming and may damage the fuel pump because it's going to run dry. So don't block that. Don't block that hole, baby. Okay, now I'm going to put these mounting rubbers on. Brianna likes the mounting rubbers.
Oh yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to put it through here, but we have to cut it enough. We have to modify this because they don't make one for this pump. So we're going to have to cut it enough so the sock could go on it. So there's a groove here. You have to get close to the groove. So we're going to go ahead and modify this. Also make sure the little window is right where the hole is on the pump. So pop this on. So you pretty much want to cut up to the middle of this, all around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So right about there, that's where you want to cut it. Alright, so I cut it all around. I just need to trim it a little bit. I'll mark where I need to trim it, and I grind it down on the grinder. And now test fit this. And that looks like it's enough for this sock to grab onto. So we're good. Alright, so this is how the fuel pump's gonna mount. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut holes in this. You can use it as a template to make a bracket and weld it over here to hold the pumps down. Alright, so I measured this plastic piece here. It's about as thick as the first ridge over here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make holes in this cardboard. Alright, so this fits through. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean this up, trim around the edges here, and put a tab going up that we could weld on the stick. So that's what it came up with. And it should go around here like so. And weld that over there. Okay, so we got a piece of 16 gauge stainless steel, a flat piece, and I'm just going to trace this out. Alright, and I also marked where the centers of those holes are. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this now. Now punch a hole on these two. A drop of butter sauce or Top Magic. Drill a small hole in there. And drill the bitch. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Over here we just used a carbide bit just to make it slowly go round like that. And we're just going to bend this up now. Alright, so this is what it looks like. We had to weld a little bead over there because we grinded a little too much when we're opening the door out for these. And now everything's nice and tight. We fit in the gas tank, it fits good. I'm going to clean that up a little bit more there with a brush and put a few tacks on that tube over there. And everything's going to be lined up nicely. Alright, so just so you know, these pumps are dummy pumps, just for mock-up purposes only. So I'm going to go ahead and put a tack over here for this. And another tack weld on the bottom of that. Alright, so we're done. Got the little tack weld there and tack weld on top. This isn't going anywhere. Okay, we're going to tighten down all the bulkhead fittings now. We made sure on the gas tank they're pointing in the right direction. We're going to put a 90 in this one and go that way when we put this on. So we're going to go ahead and tighten all these down until you see the washers squeeze out a little bit. So that's good. Alright, now I'm going to JB weld this vent tube in place, right in there. I'll put some over here and insert it in the hole. Put some in here too. And insert.
Put it in already. Oh, yeah.
You like that, camera girl?
Yeah.
And let it sit. Time to mount the pumps. One pump goes there. The other pump goes there. And this goes here. Just like that. And tighten her down. Alright, so I got these adapter fittings from J Racing, model number 340-60F. And these convert the spigot to -6AN male. And you see there's an O-ring in there. So you just pop that on, put the O-ring on, and tighten this down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make these lines here. I'm going to use Teflon steel braided lines. I'm going to put the O-ring on later. This is just for mock-up purposes. And I'm going to put this on here so I know how big I should make these lines. Okay, I put two -6 fittings up here with hose ends. And I'm going to use this PowerFlex hose from Russell. It's a -6. It's a part number 632630. So I'm just going to make one line. It's going to go like that up to here. So I'm just going to cut it right there. Alright, to cut these lines, I'm using a cutter. You can find this in Jegs or SummitRacing.com. You can also use a hacksaw. And it's not a good idea to use a cutter feel because it melts the Teflon inside. Just going to go ahead and cut that. Alright, so put this end in here. And try to round this out a little bit. Stick this end in here. And as you stick this end in here, work it, baby. Work the hole. Work it around. Just like that. Okay, I also use a little flathead here to move the steel braiding further out. And now you could put the olive in. And find yourself a hard surface and push down on it until it bottoms out. Okay, I'm going to use some hose assembly lube, my favorite butter sauce. You can also put a little bit of motor oil here, motor oil instead. So just lube that puppy up on the threads also. Now move the fitting up past the olive, making sure the olive didn't move. And insert this. And tighten that down. Now these are steel fittings, so you could use an open-end 11/16 wrench and tighten her down. And you're good. I'm doing the same thing on this side. So both -6 fuel lines are done. I'm just gonna go ahead and thread this one on. Alright, I put the O-ring on there. And now tighten this bitch down. It's good. Pop this one in and tighten her down. And it's good. And now put the second pump on. And that's good. Now the top. It's good. And we're good. Alright, a few things I want to check now. Make sure this arm is good for the level sender. That's good. I'm also going to pressurize these two to 60 pounds to see if there's any leaks. No leaks. Slightly, but it's up here. That's fine. And the same thing for this one. And we're good. And I'm going to use a -8 power steering hose for the return line. And the return line will go down here. So just cut it right there. And we're good. Okay, now for the wiring inside the sending unit. I'm using these from Racetronix, RCS045. That's for the connector that clips onto the top of the fuel pumps. And you need Teflon lined wires to put inside the gas tank. So I got 4 feet of each color. So I'm going to put these in now. And we're going to strip it. We're using 10 gauge wire here all throughout the car. Now put the connectors on. As you can see, this is copper, but it's tinned. Clamp it down a little bit. And go ahead and crimp it down. That's one. And it's two. Tug it and you're good. Alright, so on the fuel pump, you have a positive and a negative. I like to coordinate my wires, the red being positive. So this one's gonna go in like that. Before you put that in, also it's a good idea to pop this clip up a little bit over here. So it gets a better connection. And pop it in the hole, baby. And you hear that click? That's good. And the negative. I'm also going to mark the wiring to know which one's the primary pump. The primary pump I'm going to put in the bottom. The top pump is the secondary pump. Okay, now the signal wire for the level sensor and the ground wire here. Just cut them here. We stripped this and I cut this down a little bit. So when it goes through here, it'll be right there, and I can move to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on now. Alright, so I got the signal wire and the ground. Put those through here. And put the grommet through. Alright, so we got all of them through. The reason I did this is because I didn't want any butt connectors inside where the gas is, so now I just pull everything through here. And I'm going to mark which one is the primary pump. And make sure everything's out of the way of everything here. And this is the primary pump power wire. Alright, so I got some JB Weld here. I'm going to fill up these wires in here. It's going to be messy, but it is what it is. Now put these socks on. Just push them down and they bite onto the plastic. And the top one on. And you're good. Alright, time to put it in. Make sure nothing's in the way. Make sure the two power wires aren't touching anything. And we're ready to put it in. Float first. Angle it down. Just ring over. Put this in. Shove everything in that hole.
Wow, that's real tight.
You love it.
You should have used lube.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right. Make sure the ring is out. All right, now we have the top ring on here. We just got to push everything down under these tabs here. All right. And we're good. All right, so I'm gonna put a 90 here and straight hoses here. This is the return, so I'm gonna do a dash 8 all the way down to the end of this tube. And to 2 6s, I'm also gonna go down to the end of this tube. So I'm just gonna make the lines off of that. All right, so I made the lines. I put the harness in here. Now we're gonna route these lines. All right, over here, I just bent this down a little bit to make some room, because this was pointing upwards. I don't want it to cut into my lines. I also put the factory rubber here, the mount, which has holes in it. And it's got 4 holes, which is perfect. We have 4 lines. So I'm just gonna put tape around this. So this is gonna sit over here. The line's gonna go just like that. I got some 5/8 rubber hose. I'm gonna slice it down the middle, put it over here, and zip tie it, just to further protect these lines. Alright, it's easier to put the gas tank in if this is not in the way. So just go ahead and pop this bad boy out. Alright, now put the neck in first. Watch the vent tube. Alright, second. Well, wait there. Okay. There we go. And we're in. Alright, so we got the jack underneath the tank. And put these in now. And now the other side. Alright, so the gas tank is in. I also put a rubber hose here for this harness so it doesn't hit the lip of the gas tank. And that's how everything sits. And now we're just gonna put everything back, the exhaust. I'm not gonna show you because I showed you when I took it off. So it's a reversal of removal. Put the exhaust back in, the panhard bar, and everything else here, and put the rear back together up where it's supposed to be. Alright, so the two -6s, I have a Y block, two 6s into an 8. This will be the feed. So I'm just gonna mount it over here, and I'm gonna cut these lines and put everything together. Alright, so I grabbed the Y block with a adjustable wrench with some duct tape on it, and I did all these lines already, and just tighten that down. Alright, so I'm going to put a hose clamp here, an insulated one. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to put a hard line here. We're going to mount the fuel filter up there, and make sure you smoke right next to the gas tank. And we're going to make a hard line there to connect that. Then a hard line all the way straight through to the front of the car. So I'm going to make that little hard line up there. Alright, so we got the air motor filter. We got two orb end fittings to male ends over here, and this is the line we just made. And we also got a bracket for this. And it's going to go up there. Go ahead and tighten that down. Should be good. Alright, so I put a little space behind this bracket, space it out a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and put self-tappers in here. Alright, now the return line. I'm going to tighten that down. And clamp this bad boy down. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to end this stubber line here. We're going to go hard lines all the way in the bottom back into the engine bay. So over here I got this 37-degree male union to mate this to a hard line. So put that in there and tighten her down. And it's good. I'm going to use this breather on the vent line, the hard line. It's a 3/8 end over here with a clamp. And this is from K&N, part number 62-1320. And insert it in. And you're good. Alright, so now we're going to do the hard lines from the back. We're going to run two 1/2-inch pipes, copper nickel pipes, and we're going to go up through there, in the back over there, then go over there. Then I'm going to run the feeds and the return up that way. So the reason I'm doing that is because I want it away from any turbo piping that may be here in the future. Yep, you heard that correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do these hard lines now. Okay, so we have this pickup tool here that bends very, very easily. And we bent it to go to the route that we want it to go to, up right over there. So now we're going to go ahead and bend the pipe to this shape. So this is the pipe that we're going to use. It's a copper nickel pipe. You get it from thestopshop.com. And it's a 1/2-inch, which is equivalent to -8 line. So this roll, we're just going to unroll it, make it straight, then bend it to the shape that we want to bend it. So my camera girl's stepping on it on one end, and I'm rolling it straight with the other on the floor. You see how straight that comes out. No need for a bender, folks. Alright, we're going to go ahead now and bend this by hand. So you get the gist of it. I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so after a couple of minutes of bending it by hand, that's what we got. It's pretty good. Very easy to bend by hand too. To make this process a little easier, we're also going to take the cross member off here, because the lines are going to run right on top the stock routing over there. So once we drop this off a little bit, give us a little extra room here to work around with. It needs a 15 millimeters here. Put a jack underneath it to hold it up. Alright, so we put it in place. As you can see, it goes up there where we want it. So we pretty much put it above this too because we lowered the cross member. And we made a mark right here. And go ahead and use pipe cutters to cut this. Now when you do this, you gotta cut it very, very slowly, or else you're gonna pinch the tube because it's a little soft, this tube. Alright, so strap it over here too, just to hold it now. With the brake line in there too. Alright, now we're gonna bend the hump over here just a little bit. And we're over here, we're gonna go straight to the filter. Okay, now we're gonna flare the hard pipe. You need tube nuts. This is Russell part number 660585 for 1/2 inch pipe. This is Russell 660665 for the tube sleeves. And that's what they look like. And you also need a 37-degree flaring tool, which is what I have right here. See the part number below. Okay, I also got this gravel protector. We're going to put this over the lines. This is stainless steel, and it protects it from any gravel or pebbles or anything that could be thrown onto the line. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this on. Alright, just going to slide that through onto the pole over there, onto the pipe. And just going to go all the way to the front with it. Okay, first thing that goes on is the tube nut. Pop that bad boy in. Then the tube sleeve goes like this. When you flare it, it's gonna look like that. So we marked it and we're gonna cut it right there now, the line. Alright, we're gonna deburr this now. The back of the fitting of the cutter has a tool. You just shove it in there and you deburr that. Put the tool in. Make it flush to the top of the block, right there. It's gonna release soon. There you go, it released. Now you can go back with it. Turn back, yeah. And let's see this flare, baby. One thing about this pipe, it does real nice flares. So that's what you got. Alright, so we flared that, the return line. And we're just gonna tighten everything down. Alright, so this is done. I'm gonna put this union here. It's a -8 to a -8. Flared metal union. So just gonna tighten that down, and this goes to the fuel filter. We were gonna hardline it up to here, but we changed our mind because it's easy to change the filter this way, so we just made a little extension here with this soft line, and this actually fits nicely in this hump here. So that's why we did that. Alright, so we put 2 lines in a 1-inch insulated clamp now, and we're up to here. This is how it looks like up front. Everything clears, everything's out of the way. Goes all the way up and above. It clears the steering shaft too. Went inside, had somebody turn the wheel, and plenty of clearance between the steering shaft and the lines. Okay, now we're gonna empty the oil. Since I'm down here, I'll also take this Moroso evac crankcase system out. I'm gonna put the O2 sensor in there. I have an adapter here that puts this one-way check valve. So I'm gonna take this out. Okay, that adapter to 7/8 adapter right there. Alright, now the top part of this. I'm stuffing the intake ports with some paper towels so nothing falls in there. Alright, take the intake gasket off. Alright, now I'm just going to go here with the razor blade, take the rest of this gasket off, and also take the RTV off from the China walls here. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean up this whole surface. Now we take the whole pressure sensor off. Okay, something I also like to do here is put a vacuum cleaner on the intake ports to suck up anything that might have fell in there. So I'm going to do that now. I also like to do is pour some diesel fluid all over here and have the drain plug open underneath where the drain pan is and have everything pour out. I also like to follow that with some oil. Okay, so we're using the Procomp manifold here, and I dry fitted it and it's not going in. So what the issue is over here, I just got to grind down a little bit this manifold. There's tons of meat here, so I could do that and it should drop right in. So I'm gonna go ahead and grind this down now. Alright, so we flip the manifold over and I put the gasket on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a scribe mark here, and this line will be the line where we don't want to go past when we're grinding this down. So I'm going to do that all around. Now I'm going to close these ports with some painter's tape. I'm also going to do the water jacket, only because we're going to be shaving metal and it could go in there. When we flip this over into the engine, it could fall into the engine. I'm also going to blow this out with compressed air when I'm done, so it's good to take a lot of precautions. Go ahead and grind this bitch. Okay, so I grinded this down from where the scribe marks were all the way up to the injector bosses. The manifold looks good when you put it on the engine. Everything looks good. The only thing is it still hits a little bit where the valve covers are, but I'm either going to grind down the valve covers or put thicker valve cover gaskets on. So it looks pretty good. Alright, now we're going to put some gasket sealer on the mating surface here and also on the mating surface of the gasket. Alright, now I'm going to do the underside of the intake manifold gaskets. Alright, so everything's done, nice and tacky, and I let it dry for a little bit, and I'm just going to put this gasket on. And now this side. Just make sure the bolt holes line up. And we are good. Alright, what I also like to do is I'll put a little bit of red RTV silicone around the water ports here on top. Do a real light coat, and this is done. I'm going to go ahead and do the other corners as well. Alright, now I like to use Ultra Black from Permatex on the China walls. Make sure these are really clean. They don't have any oil residue on them, or else it's not going to stick too well. Now this should be at least 1/4 inch high when you put this bead, so it could seal properly. Also overlap onto this gasket here.
That's a nice bead.
You like it, Brianna?
I do.
I got some more beads for you inside the house later.
Ooh, yay.
And we're done. Okay, now put the intake manifold on. I have a helper on the other side. Moesha is going to help me out with this. And she's going to watch the bolt holes if they line up on this side while I watch the bolt holes on the other side. And we're good. I like to put some red RTV on all my intake manifold bolts. Alright, to torque this down now, we're going to start from the middle over here and pretty much work our way out clockwise. And I'm just going to do everything to 25 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so I decided to change my valve cover gaskets. I'm putting Felpro's 1604 gasket in. These are a combination of cork and rubber sandwiched into two gaskets sandwiched into one with a steel core in it. And I chose these because it'll space up the valve covers a little bit to give me a little more extra clearance with the valve covers. So I'm going to go see if the valve covers fit on there now. Alright, so with these gaskets, when I seat the valve cover down, I have just enough space that I don't have to grind down the valve covers. With the other gaskets that are on here, they were thinner, so it touched the manifold. So now I can get away without even touching this valve cover, grinding it down over here. So I'm good! And perfect fit. And we're all good with the valve covers. Alright, now fill up with oil. You can also fill it up with the intake manifold off, just throw everything in the valley, but either way, same difference. So this is the distributor we're putting in. It's an MSD part number 8366. And this is what it looks like. This is a computer controlled distributor. I'm going to control it with the MegaSquirt I'm going to put in. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some lubricant on these gears so the gear will break in properly. Now it also comes with a new gasket for this, and pop this in, and like I said before, when we took the old one out, I gotta make this face the #1 cylinder when it drops all the way in. So go ahead and do that. As you can see there, that's perfect. And now put the distributor hold down in. And I'm gonna leave that loose for now because we gotta set the initial timing when we start the car. Alright, so this came with the kit, but I'm gonna take these off, and these also here that go to the rails. I'm gonna put my own. I'm gonna put that shade here. And 3/8 NPT is equivalent to dash 8. So these are 3/8 over here. I'm just going to take these off. And now I'm going to put a thermostat in, the thermostat housing, and the upper radiator hose on. Next, I'm putting this All-Star Performance swivel water neck. It's a 9-degree with an O-ring. That's the part number. This is actually kind of cheap. It's like 20 bucks or something like that. And this is what it comes with. And you can move this wherever you want. And those are the bolts. And I also have a Meladon part number 16401, 180-degree stat. And this is for high volume water pumps. So I'm going to put that in too. And the dropper in, right in the relief over there. The rubber on. If you need some help, you can always ask your female friend with that. And I'm going to put the bolts on. Put some red RTV on these bolts. Put them in. I'm not going to tighten down all the way because then you won't be able to position this water neck. Alright, so that's where it normally goes, but that's kind of close to that, so I'm just going to see if I could push it a little more over to the side. So I'm just going to put it over there for now. And we're good. Okay, now I'm at the mechanical fuel pump mounting spot on the block here, and I'm just gonna go ahead with a razor blade and clean off all the old RTV. Alright, I'm gonna put this block off plate on there. It's from Flash Power, item number 181272-200. It's a nice billet piece. It comes with the gasket, 4 bolts, 2 small ones for the bottom, 2 big ones for the top. And I'm also going to put some ultra black on here, on both sides of this gasket when I put it on. Put that on there. And also put a little bit on this side. And you spread the butter sauce all around. And you're ready to put it on. And put it on. I also put some RTV on the bolts too. So catch one side, then catch the other. And they're all tight. While I'm down here, I'm gonna have some fun with my camera girl, and I'm also gonna put this little radiator hose on. And we're good. Okay, now I'm gonna thread in the brass fittings for the oil pressure sensor. Go ahead and tighten this down. Okay, so the warning light, the oil pressure warning light, and the oil pressure sender is all connected and tied down. So we're good there. This is the throttle bar I'm putting on. It's Holley F5, part number 112-587. Comes with a TPS sensor, vacuum ports, an iroc, and an inlet air temperature sensor. Alright, so on my old carburetor I had this TV made easy from Bowtie Overdrives, and what this does is you can move this around, so you could put the 7-inch R4 throttle cable right here, and it gives it just the right amount of tension when the throttle goes through the motion. So it comes with a couple of plates here, and I'm going to try to adapt this to this. This is supposed to be the same linkage from a 4150 top carburetor. It's a little different, so I'm going to try to make this work without using that back plate. And I'll probably have to grind this down, then this will go on there, and I'm going to see how I'm going to sandwich this in there. Maybe I might weld it here, tack weld it, or use bolts to hold this together. So I'm going to go ahead and grind this down now. I'm going to grind this down, make it flat. And that's good. Alright, so I also clamped down the vice grip. I'm going to go ahead and make a hole right here. Let's drill this bitch. I also grind this down a little bit so that can actually sit in there. And this actually sits flush in there now. And when you tighten that down, it butts up against it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put these 2 screws in. Okay, I'm using some red thread locker on here. Some red thread locker on this nut. Put this on this one here. That's it. Alright, so that's how it looks. I also put a bolt here and a nut behind it. This I left loose, and I cranked this one down also. And these two have red thread locker behind them. And now when I put the transmission cable right here, I can move this up and down and set it exactly where I want it. So we're good. Alright, now let's go back to the fuel lines. So these are the 2 lines up here. This is the feed, this is the return. On the feed line, I'm going to put an aeromotive dash-8 Y block, 8 in and 2/8 out, and each 8 is going to go into a separate fuel rail. That's a parallel fuel feeding. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this as much over as I can this way, and just put this on here with a tube nut, attach it over here. This goes somewhat like this. I'm going to put a tube nut and a sleeve in here. Alright, so I bent it. Everything looks good. And that's how it's going to look. There's no kinks. And it's nice and neat. Now I'm going to do the return line. I'm going to flare it. And put a tube nut on it. I also want to mention real quick, I'm also putting some thermo shield on here. This is part number 14002. I'm only putting this around the area of the fuel line where it's really close to the headers. And it's adhesive lined in the back. So I just put it on there and I put some metal zip ties around this and wrap it around. So just another quick tip what I do with these fuel lines also. Alright, so I flared that and put a tube nut on it. I'm going to put a flared union, 37-degree flared dash-8 union over here. I'm going to tighten that down. I'm also going to put a clamp here and clamp it down over here. And I'm going to put a 9-degree bend over here for the return. And that's how it looks like. Alright, so this is how it looks. I put the clamp over there, and this is the return, and that's the feed. I closed the hood. There's plenty of clearance from this and the hood. This is nice and sturdy now. It's not going anywhere. I wanted the fittings away from the top of the exhaust, so it's right in the middle of the booster. That's good. That's where I wanted it. And I also put the fittings on the rails here with everything in place. Just mocked everything in place. This is the Turbo Smart FPR 2000, good for up to 2000 horsepower. And over here is a Vibrant Performance part number 11372. It's a dash-8 AN female, and the other side is a 3/8 NPT male. And over here is an orb fitting on one end, O-ringed dash-8 male, and a regular dash-8 male on the other side. That's what you put on the pressure regulators. And this is a fuel pressure transducer. It's for the fuel pressure gauge, electric gauge. I'm going to put inside the car, the Sport Comp, by odometer. And the return is over here. It's going to go straight back, and I'm going to join it with the other lines back over here onto a 90 that's going to be over here. And that's how it looks like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rails off and bring them to the bench, and I'm going to put blue Teflon tape on these adapter fittings here from the rails to the fittings, the NPT fittings. And there's also a NPT plug underneath both rails right over here, which I'm also going to put some blue Teflon on. And I'll make sure I mark these, or I know where these go. So when I turn these on here, the NPT fit adapters, they can be in the same exact direction. So over here, this edge here lines up with this. So I know that's gonna go like that. And the same thing here. There's an edge here. There's an edge here. And that lines up with this. Alright, put the rail in the vise, and that's the pipe plug I was talking about. That's an 8mm plug. Actually, that's actually loose. So I'm going to go ahead and put some Teflon tape on this. This is what I'm using, Blue Monster PTFE tape. This is really good. So I'm going to use this to seal the whole rail wherever there's NPT fittings, threads. As you can see, it's blue. Alright, so this is pretty thick. I just made it, I flipped it over, I bent it over, so it's double the thickness now. And you go with the threads. and you're good. And stick it in. And that should be good. And same thing with this guy. Same thing with this. I went around a couple times. I left a few threads on top, not covered. I do that because I don't want any of this Teflon going inside here and clogging the injectors. So go ahead and screw this bitch on. And we're good. It lines up where I had the mark. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side of this fuel rail and do the same thing to the other fuel rail that's still on the car. And in just case you were wondering, these fittings are Russell fittings. They're adaptive fittings, flare to pipe 45 degree. And the part number to these are Russell part number 660963. So that's what I'm using on the end of the rails. And once I'm done, I like to get some compressed air and blow everything out. And we're good. Alright, now I'm gonna make the lines here. You've seen me do this before, not a big deal. I'm just gonna join everything I have here. This is the return over here, and the two feeds are gonna go in the back. So I'm just gonna make the lines now. Alright, so I made this one feed line here to this fuel rail. I also put this throttle bracket in, but this isn't the throttle bracket I'm going to use. I'm just using this to mock stuff up over here to see what's in the way when I make my fuel lines. So I'm just going to route the second fuel line straight over from here, all the way under everything to the other rail over there. Okay, so I put a 90 here for the return, and another 90 right here. And we're going to cut this last piece of hose. It's going to go right here. So go ahead and make that now. We're going to do one end first. So pop that in and screw it. And we're good. Alright, put this end here. Alright, I'm also going to mock it up with this steel braided hose clamp. And this is for a -6 hose, but I'm using a -8 because a -8 Teflon line is the same size as a regular -6. That's a number 4 Allen that goes in the middle there. And so we're gonna mock it up over here. Okay, so that's just for mock up. That's gonna go like that. And now over here, what you gotta do is you gotta mark this over here and over here so it lines up perfectly, and I'm gonna cut it right here. And that white mark lines up with the white mark on the hose. We're good. Alright, so the return line's all mocked up and everything looks good. Alright, so I'm just gonna pop the fuel rails out, put the injectors in now. And I'm going to tighten what I can tighten here with the fuel system. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this apart again. Okay, for the regulator, put a dab of hose assembly lube on there on the O-ring. And pop that bad boy in. And that's good. And I'll do the rest. I put some blue tape on the pressure transducer here. Pop that in. And we're good. Alright, now so what I'm going to do is I want to turn this the other way, this way, because this hits over here when I put this bracket on. So I'm just going to mark where I need to make that little recess, and it should be right around the middle, right there. So I'm going to grind that down. Alright, I got it to work. I drilled these holes over here for these screws a little more, and I cocked this over that way. And I also put a hairpin here to keep this clip open, because it's kind of close to the opening over there, so it'll never come off. Now you can also press this to adjust it easily. So now when you push this, Nice and smooth, baby. Like Brianna's tush. And at full throttle, you give it full throttle, you try pulling this some more. If you can't pull it, that means the throttle valve is fully depressed. So I did that, and that's good. Now I'm also gonna have somebody sit in the car, put the throttle cable on, and floor it all the way down inside the car, and make sure it's achieving full throttle over here. So I'm gonna do that also. Alright guys, in an effort to make this video a little shorter, I'm just gonna tell you guys what I'm doing here and what I did already. Now to get the injector sizing, there's a bunch of different calculators. You could just search online for them. These injectors here I got from a friend, and once I go boost, I'm going to change them to bigger injectors. Now all I did here was I put some engine oil on the injector O-rings. I put the injectors in the intake manifold injector bores, then took the rail, I put it on top of the injectors, pushed down, and seated everything. The whole intake manifold kit came with the fuel rails and 4 screws that go to the side to hold the rails to the manifold. Now I went to Ace and I got bolts the same size as those screws because you could get a better clamp on the bolts. Just a little FYI here when you're doing this job, if this is not too tight, that's fine, because when there's pressure, it'll actually push it down and it'll seat it against the seal. So that's one thing to note when you're putting these in. And one last thing I want to mention is once you're done clamping it down, grab the injector and twist it back and forth a little bit, just to make sure that there's going to be no leaks and the injector is sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. Okay, now you guys already seen me mock it up before, so I'm just going to put the fuel regulator and the fuel lines back on, all the feeds and the return lines. Alright, so fuel lines are done. You gotta make sure there's a little slack here when the engine torques over. And these are Teflon lines, like I said before many times, will last forever. And so will the hardline copper nickel lines, will last forever. So the lines are done and nothing's in the way, it clears everything. These aren't touching either. Everything is good. Now the high throttle body comes with a throttle body gasket and the gasket for the filter. I'm only going to use the gasket for the filter. I'm using part number 1900 Felpro. I'm using 2 of these throttle body gaskets. They're a little better in quality. And I'm also going to use a 1-inch phenolic spacer in between. Now for the throttle body studs, I got these huge studs here. This is part number Racing Product Company, part number R0977. Now you could cut these to size because over here they're going to be longer than the back over there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the throttle body on. These are nice gaskets. They're a little sticky, so they form a real nice seal. And the final step is to put the spring on. Now I can put that on there. Make sure this is tight. Tighten that down. Alright, so there's a latch here and a latch on the other side. You pull that and this seat goes down and you can access back here. Just pull the carpet up. And those are the wires coming in from inside the tank. And you have the 3 wires coming from the gas tank here. One's the ground for the level sender and the fuel pump that was in here. This was an original TBI car. The purple is the fuel level sender wire that goes to the cluster. And this is the power wire going to the TBI pump inside the gas tank. All I'm doing here now is just drilling out the rivets. And once you drill them out, that thing just pops right out. And that's the whole thing right there. Now all I'm going to do here is just take this cover off. I'm not going to show you, but I'm going to cut this out of here, the 3 wires, and I'm just going to drill through that thing so I can put the 10 gauge wires. Then once I put the wires through that, I'm going to RTV them in place. Again, over here I'm not going to show everything, but this is a 1/2-inch bolt here that I'm taking off. It's the rear driver's side seat. You gotta take that off, and you gotta take the sill plate off, and the stock wiring is all underneath the carpet over here. And this is what the connector looks like after I put RTV on it and put the 10 gauge wires through. I'm gonna loom this and put it back in the car. Alright, so now I'm gonna put this through here, and I'm gonna have some underneath catch the bolts and the nuts. And pop it in the hole, baby. And now connect everything, making sure you know which wire is the number 1 wire here for the first pump. Okay, since we have the car up in the air, I'm going to go ahead and put this O2 sensor from 14.7.com. This is the Spartan 2 Lambda controller with the Spartan 2 LSU 4.9 sensor here. This is the controller, and this is the O2 sensor. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in and route the wires up to get this ready for later on. It already comes with some anti-seize on it, but I also like a little bit more of copper anti-seize, and don't get it on the sensor itself. So that's ready. And stick it in, baby.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
You like that, Brianna?
Oh yeah.
It's good.
That copper anti-seize is real good.
Brianna approves of everything I do.
That's
You always
right.
need that butter sauce on there, right, Brianna?
Oh yeah. Otherwise it won't go in.
Yep. And we're good. We're just gonna route this up on top. Alright, now I'm gonna take the back seat off and move it aside. These are 13mm nuts and washers on there. And this whole thing pops right out just like that. So I'm gonna put the 2 grounds, I'm gonna separate them, put them on the brackets where the back seat bolts into. So just in case one ground goes bad, I always have a second fuel pump as a backup. And I just gotta grind down, I sand down the bottom of this. And I'll go ahead and do that. So that's all done. And that's a very good ground. So what I'm gonna do now is put some dielectric grease on it, or some butter sauce all the way around here, so it won't rust, but you don't have any moisture inside the car, so you should be good. That's just some extra insurance. And I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Strip her down, twist her up, and stick her. Make her all hot. Alright, now the purple wire from the harness is a sensor wire, so that gets connected to our blue wire. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a butt connector on these. And that's done. Okay, now this is a Torx T50 for the seatbelt. And now we can access this whole wire harness. Alright, so this wire goes through these little hangers that they have here, the factory hangers. So we're gonna reuse those, those are very good. And I'm gonna take the ground wire and the old fuel pump power wire are in here. I'll take that off. This ground wire I'm gonna reuse, so I'm gonna keep this inside the car. I'll probably use that for the switch for the second pump. So now I'm gonna run these 10 gauge fuel pump positive wires. Alright, so we're gonna put this in through here, route it through here, press that down. Look, it's bone stock, baby. So everything is where we want it. And these we're gonna route over here, so keep that in there for now. Put this down. I'll just put that seatbelt in over there. Okay, so that goes in there. Ground's gonna go on underneath and put the nut underneath and tighten her down. And both grounds are in. All right, so I ran the 2 power wires in through here. They're in here. And I pulled the power wire for the original fuel pump. I might use this again, I'm not sure yet, I haven't decided. Or I might just run new wires. I might use this to control something. And this here is the ground wire. And I'm going to use that to manually switch the second pump on. So here, everything's in here. And all I gotta do is just put this back in. And everything's bolted back down. Alright, I'm underneath the brake booster now. Right there, there's a hole in the firewall with the grommet. There's only one wire going through there. Usually the wires for the charcoal canister go through there. And this car doesn't have that. So we have a nice empty hole right there to fill up with all the wires that we have for the fuel pumps and everything else. So we stuck a clothes hanger in there, right there. And I'm going to go ahead and tie the fuel pump wires on there. And that's where it's coming out, right behind the brake pedal. And she's through. Alright, I got the wires here. What I did here, I made two separate cables. I ran them from here all the way around to the alternator for the hot side of the fuel pump relays. Alright, so these are ready. Originally this power wire was down here close to this valve cover. We clocked this over, so it's up here now. We have a lot of space to put this on. I'm going to put a link in the description below on how to clock this, so I'll spare you guys from that. And I just put these on here and tighten these down. And we're done over there. Alright, so I'm here by the driver's side where the relays are. This one is for the cooling fan. I'm going to use this green with white wire for the ground signal. So I could ground out the relay to send power to the fan, the cooling fan, stock fan. And this one here is the original fuel pump relay. So what I'm going to do with this one is, I'm going to put a 15 amp fuse right where the battery is. There's a fuse holder. And I'm going to feed the fuel injectors and the oxygen sensor from the ground wire that's going to feed my fuel pump relays. So in other words, whenever the computer senses a crank signal, an RPM about 300-400 RPM, it's going to energize this fuel pump relay, and it's going to send power to the oxygen sensor and to the injectors. So I'm going to use this for both. This circuit's enough for both. The original circuit's about 20 amp. I'm going to put a 15 amp fuse in there, so it should be good for both. And this way I could use the stock wiring, not have to really wire too much. I'm going to go ahead and wire the fuel pump relays and mount them over here with the fuses. Okay, these are the relays I'm using from Racetronix. These are 40-30 amp relays. It comes with the seals, it comes with the terminals and the clips. And this is what it looks like. Now for fuel pump number 1, I'm going to have 30 being the feed, 87 being the power source from the battery, and that's going to be fused to a 20 amp fuse, and I have that also from Racetronix. 85 and 86 will be the switch circuit, so I'm going to have one as a ground from the ECU for the fuel pump, and one I'm going to have a switched 12 volt on here. Second fuel pump will be the same except for the switch circuit side. Instead of having just the ECU control the ground side of the switch, I'll also have a manual switch inside the car to a ground that I could manually override this. That's just in case if the first fuel pump fails, I could just flip the switch and go to the second pump. And of course, that other side of the ground will also be switched on by the ECU whenever it senses boost. These are the fuse holders I got, also from Racetronix, part number FHK002, and 220 amp fuses. Alright, so I'm going to take their fuse holder, snip it right in the middle, and strip both ends. Okay, so I put a heat shrink butt connector on one end of the fuse holder, and that goes to the alternator side of the power feed, and this side is going to go to the 87 terminal on the relay, and the numbers are down here. You can see the numbers or numbered down there. So that's what you know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and strip this and put those terminals on that they supply you with. These are the 10 gauge seals, the blue ones. So put those on. These are the 10 gauge connectors. I like to pinch them first a little bit. Now I took the die off my tool because I don't have the die for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and crimp this. You can also do this with a pair of regular crimpers. You have to be fancy like the clown. And that's perfect. Alright, so I already put the fuel pump feed number 30 on there. Now this side's number 87. I'm going to pop that in. And that's good. And now this side to the alternator. Tug tug, you're good. And you're good. Okay, so I got a switch 12 volt. I put a 5 amp fuse on this switch 12 volt, and it's going to power 3 of our relays, the switch side of the relays. And number 86 is switched power. And that relay is good. The only other thing that we need is the ground signal from the ECU to power this relay. So we're done with fuel pump number 1. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is I'm also going to wire the relay. This is the stock fuel pump relay for this car. I took C out. C is the red wire here. I just popped it out. And E is the gray wire that feeds to the fuel pump. A is the wire, the orange wire here, and that's fused. I put a 15 amp fuse in that. I'm going to show you in a second what that is. And then D and F, I'm going to put a switch 12 volt that switches the other relays on. And F, I'm going to make a ground coming from the first fuel pump to energize this one too, the ground side. Let's get turn this relay on. So this relay will control the injectors, the hot side of the injectors, and will also control the oxygen sensor. Very important here, you need to have the switch 12 volt power going to this to activate this relay. It also has to be hot when you're cranking. Now I checked that and we're good. Now let me show you the fuse that I'm talking about by the battery. This is the fuse by the battery, and that feeds the stock fuel pump relay power. I'm going to put a 15 amp in here, 5 amps for the oxygen sensor, and 10 amps for the fuel injectors. Okay, I'm going to cut the black with white striped wire and the green white striped wire. That's the D and F, that's the switch side. Okay, I have this tool here. You take this from behind it out, there's 2 clips. And now I'm gonna use this as a ground. So pop these 2 in the hole here. And pull that out. Just like that. Alright, so this is what I made here. The ground signal from the ECU is going to come here. It's going to split off. One's going to go to the first fuel pump relay, and it's also going to ground out the original fuel pump. So this side over here goes to number 85 on the first fuel pump relay. So pop that in. So this first fuel pump relay is done. And now this other end here goes to this relay, to the F terminal where we took it out. Now I'm going to do the switched 12 volt on this terminal. Alright, so I put a relay in there. Now we're going to test the gray wire. When the key goes on, it should have power. So I connected my power probe to the gray wire. On. Off. on, off. So our connections are good. This is the gray wire going inside the car for the original fuel pump. So we're all good here with this original fuel pump relay. Okay, now this gray wire here, I'm gonna cut this. We're gonna have one wire going in and two feeds out. All right, so that's what I did there. One's going to the relay and two is going out. One is going inside the engine, inside the driver's compartment, and one is going to be for the fuel injectors, that red wire. Okay, so this is done, this relay. Pop this back where it was. Alright, so these are all wired. Everything's where it's supposed to be. The only thing that we are missing here is the ground to enable the first fuel pump and the original fuel pump relay, and also the ground to enable the cooling fan. Also, one more thing which I wrote inside, the ground to enable the second fuel pump. This is the MegaSquirt harness, and this is the 37-pin connector. So this goes inside the car. I'm going to wire this. We're going to run this through the hole that I'll be making on the firewall. Alright, to pass this harness through, I have two holes down here. Isn't that always the case? Well, anyway, I'm going to drill one hole a little bit bigger, and now I'm going to pass this grommet through so we can put the harness through there. Alright, so I'm on the passenger side here, and I just took the panels off underneath. They're just two Phillips head screws on the side here and 7mm bolts on top. And it's right behind that, right over there, where we're going to drill through. Right there. And let's begin, baby! And now put the grommet in. Push it, hold on, almost got it. And it's good. And now the MegaSquirt harness goes right through. Pull right through. Alright, now the purple wire from the harness, MegaSquirt harness, it says fuel pump wire. This will be our ground here that we had from previously, which grounds out our number one pump, fuel pump, and the relay that controls the injectors power and the oxygen sensor power. Okay, so this is a spare wire. We're going to use this as a ground to ground the fan at a certain temperature, and I'm just going to put that in this one, and we're done with the relays. Okay, so these are the injector harnesses that we have here, and I'm pretty much making, this is the power feed. It's going to come through here from the relay, energize this, going to go through here and energize this. So all I'm doing is connecting these together. Just putting them together in like that. Crimp them down, then go to the next one and just connect all these together. So it looks something like this. Alright, so this is the harness. This is the power feed. I connected all that on both sides, and now I'm going to connect it to the power feed over there, that wire right there. And over here on the harness you have injector bank 1, these two. I'm going to split off 2 injectors each, and the green wires are for injector bank 2, and do the same thing with a split it 2 for each. So we'll go ahead and put this harness in now. Connect the main feed for the injectors. And click those in. These are the last injectors here. And this will go into the ground side. Now what happens is when a car starts, it's going to power that relay to give power to all these injectors. And once the ECU senses an RPM signal, it sends out a ground pulse to all the injectors to fire them. And in this case, it'll be a batch fire. So it'll fire each bank one by one. Alright, so I'm going to put this fuel pressure gauge in. Before there was a carburetor pressure gauge in here. This goes up to 100 psi. This is Autometer's Procomp, fully electric fuel pressure gauge. And it's got the pressure transducer here. And it's got these 3 wires. And these connect from this back of the pigtail over here. This pigtail connects to this back of this gauge here, right here. Then you have also a 12-volt switched cable here, and you also have a ground, which is separate. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on install this because I had a gauge that went up to 15 psi. This is a carburetor gauge. So all the wiring's there already, and I don't think you guys want to see me just splice into them, the existing wiring. So I'm just going to put that in now. Alright, so you have 5 wires coming out of the MegaSquirt harness. These are all black, and these are these are the grounds for the ECU. These are going to go in the back of the head. There's a 14mm bolt in the back of the head. I'm going to put them on there. I'm probably going to join 3 of them on one and 2 in another eyelet. So that's what I'm going to do here now. Alright, so we decided to put all grounds in one, so that's what we came up with, and that I'm just going to put in the back of the head. You can't really film that because it's really tight back there, but it's going to go back there. There's a 14mm bolt. And I like to go in with a flexible wrench in there, ratcheting wrench. So I'm going to put this on. Alright, we're going to wire up the throttle position sensor. Now the Holley instruction manual comes with all the pin connections here, the part numbers for the pigtails. It tells you what everything is here. So for throttle position sensor, you can get this from DIY Auto Tune also. It's a 3-wire TPS with the piggy, and over here the MegaSquirt wiring diagram. It shows you the TPS. The blue wire is a signal wire. Gray is the 5-volt reference wire. And the black wire is the signal ground wire. So go ahead and wire this up. There's an A, B, and C here. So A, according to the Holley, is the 5-volt reference. And according to MegaSquirt, the 5-volt reference was gray. So I'm going to put the gray wire where the A is supposed to be. So put this in like this. And you heard that click. So that's good. C is signal, and the MegaSquirt signal is blue, so we'll follow the same thing as what MegaSquirt has. And the last one is the black wire, which is a signal ground. And now you put these in, stick it in the hole from behind. And it's done. Alright, so the wires correspond. Isn't that a beautiful thing? And over here, I'm going to use this sensor ground wire a couple times, so I just put a butt connector here to splice it over there. And over here, this goes straight onto the TPS. And we're done with that TPS. Alright, now we're going to put the coolant temperature sensor in. We're using the yellow wire from that MegaSquirt harness. It says coolant temperature sensor on it, and the sensor ground wire, and we're going to put that right over here next to the thermostat. Put some thread sealant on these threads. Paint it on there, baby. Insert in hole. Good. Alright, so I connected the wires, I loomed everything up, and now over here, I'm just gonna heat shrink this end over here. And we're done. Same thing with the inlet air temp. And this is the orange from the MegaSquirt harness, and the same signal sensor ground, sorry. And just pop this in. And that's done. Now the idle air control valve, you get this from DIYAutotune.com also. Okay, so this is the wiring diagram for the iroc motor. If you have 50 ohms of resistance between the outer two pins or the inner two pins, you follow the first diagram. And the bottom over here, same thing. If you have 50 ohms between the first two, then you got to connect the blues like that and the greens like that. So I have this connected with the outer two. I have two alligator clips over there. And as you can see, the multimeter, it's close to 50 ohms. So we're going to use the first diagram. So I'm pretty much going to do this. The two blues on the outside, the two greens on the inside. I'm going to do that here. And same thing with the harness, the MegaSquirt. Alright, that's all wired. And pop it in. Alright, so I already have all the wires here ready for the LSU, the controller. The blue wire is going inside. We'll put an LED light on it. It tells you if the oxygen sensor is correct spot in the exhaust system. This is coming from the O2 sensor. That plugs in right here. We're going to have this controller over here. One ground is going to the chassis ground. The other ground is going to back of the block where the ECU was grounded. A green wire here, that's going to the pink MegaSquirt harness wire. That's a signal for the ECU from the O2 sensor. Brown we're not using. The white and black were the grounds I previously mentioned. And the red is a switched power from the original fuel pump of the car, which is this gray wire. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect these wires, they're all here, and hide the controller under here. Okay, so everything is connected. Brown we don't use in this case. And then over here, I just click this into the O2 sensor. And we're done here. Alright, I took the bottom panel off here. I'm going to put the switch for the second fuel pump override, manual override, and the light for the oxygen sensor. The oxygen sensor light's going to go here, and the switch is going to go here. So the switch is going to go here. So let me mark a spot right there. Right there. Alright, so this is switched for the second pump. What we need is a ground signal for it to go on the second pump. So this is coming from the ECU. So once the ECU gives a ground signal, when the boost goes on, it goes through this wire to the pump. Now, if I just want to manually override the ECU and just turn the pump on, I click this on, and this goes to a ground, and it'll connect and go straight to the pump and ground it out. So this is ready. So I'll pop this in. Just tighten that down. Okay, we went to our electrical supply store, and we got this. These will actually go into this LED. Crimps on it nicely, grabs on it nicely. So I'm going to go ahead now, put this end in here, crimp it down, and heat it up. Pop that in there. Now the left one is a longer one, so the blue one goes on the left one, and the ground goes on the right side. Now put a dab of black silicone over here, just a little bit. And we're done with the LED. And we're good here. We're done. Alright, so I have a GM HEI 8. Basically what that means is the ignition module has 4 pins here and 2 pins here. And they count these 2 pins also that go to the pickup coil reluctor. So that's 8 altogether. the way I'm going to wire it is, I also have an MSD box. So the way I'm going to wire it is like this. I don't know if I can zoom in here. GBRE is the 4 pins here. I'm not going to wire it this way, I'm going to wire it this way. G is going to go to sensor ground. B will be the 5-volt reference, that's pin 5 on the DB37 connector. The SPR3 on the MegaSquirt harness wire. R will go to 24 tack in for the signal, for the ECU. E will be 36, which is called ignition and timing control on the connector. So that's how that's going to go. Over here, these two wires, one's plus, the positive side, and the other one is C, the negative side. The negative side will go to the white wire and MSD box. The positive side, I have a pink wire coming out of my harness. This is a switch 12 volt. It's going to go here, and it would also go to the red wire on the MSD box. It powers the ICM and the MSD box. These are the red and white wires I'm talking about on the MSD box. And the heavy red, heavy black go onto the battery, straight to the battery. And I'm not going to use the violet green, and this is already hooked up to my coil. I have the black and orange feeding my coil. So that's what I'm going to do now. Alright, so I'm using iroc Piggy over here. ABCD, ABCD, GBRE. Just follow that. And this is a mushroom type of connector. 2-pin, AB, and that'll be used over here on distributor, AB. So I'm pretty much going to do exactly what I told you. So I'll show you little bits and pieces of it while I'm doing it. Okay, this is the wire coming out of the harness. This is, I said pink before, but it's actually orange. So this powers the MSD box. I'm going to use this to power the MSD box and the ICM, the 2-pin. So this is the white wire that's coming out of the MSD box, and that's paired with the red wire. This is switched 12 volt. And I'm going to split this, and one's going to go into the ICM positive side. And the other side's going to go into the orange wire I showed you before. Alright, so I connected the red and white wires onto this pigtail. And now this one is going to go into the orange wire. And that's done. Okay, this tack wire at the end over here, you can just tape it down and you'll be done. And the A terminal goes here. We use this for all the sensors, the ground, and just pop that in there. And then this 4-wire terminal is done. Okay, one thing I want to say before I plug this into the distributor is this B wire, I put a weather pack on it so I could disconnect it when I'm adjusting the initial timing. So I'm just going to plug this in and plug the 2-pin connector into the distributor. And she's in! Who's your clown daddy? And now the 2-pin connector. And we're good. Alright, I'm just going to plug wires back in. I don't think I need to show you guys this. I think most of you probably know how to do this. The rotor is pointing here, so that's number 1. And the rotor turns clockwise. So the firing order is 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2. And I'm just going to put the ignition wires on there just like that. And of course, number 1 is this cylinder right here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, just like that. So I'm just going to put the ignition wires back on. Okay, now this red wire coming out of the MegaSquirt harness. This says on a 12 volt switched power. This is for the ECU power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the stock wiring for the stock computer, the stock power, which is this fuse right here, which is ECM. I'll put a 3-amp fuse in there. And then when you look back here, it's a pink wire with a black line going through it. So these are the stock connectors for the stock computer of this TBI engine, and I located the pink wire, which is right here. I don't know if you can see that right there. That's number 6 on this terminal. So I put a test light on it with the ground to the door jamb over there. So just to double check, that's the wire. I'm going to turn the car on, switched on, and the light goes on. I'm going to go ahead and take out the fuse and make sure that goes off. So that's the fuse right there. I'm going to go ahead and pull it, and the light goes off. So that's the power to the ECU. I'm going to use that. And that's done. Okay, so we picked the wires over here going to the second fuel pump and going to the cooling fan relay. The green wire, which is F idle, number 30 on the pin, on the DB37. This goes into the relay to give it ground, the cooling fan relay. And we're using SPR4 to, on this side, the switch of the second pump. So when the boost goes on, this will give it the ground it needs to energize the relay. So the fan ground for the relay is connected, and so is the second pump ground. So we're good. Alright, so now it's time to pressurize the fuel system to see if we have any leaks. For the secondary pump, I put in a 20 amp fuse, and we don't have the ECU on yet, so we're just gonna flip the switch and pressurize the whole fuel system. So ignition on, and hit the switch, and I can hear it already. Everything is being pressurized. What I like to do is touch the fittings, see if there's any gas on my hands, and inspect everything. I'm also going to put the car up in the air, check any fittings that are underneath the car. Also check by the injectors. You can also smell it sometimes or hear it squirt out, and everything looks actually pretty good. For these rails, I will double check here. These tend to leak here, so run your finger underneath to check that. Is anything leaking? This we might have to tighten down a little bit more. But other than that, everything else is good. No leaks. Alright, so now I'm going to adjust the fuel pressure. I'm going to turn the second pump on. Flip the switch. Alright, so on this Turbo Smart regulator, I loosen this nut, and that's a 4mm Allen right there. And I'm just going to adjust it down to 43. And we're good. 43, baby. So there's 4 ports in the back of the throttle body. I'm using the smaller port, which is a 3/16 port, and the larger one's a 3/8. But I'm using the smaller one to route to this fuel pressure regulator. What I did was I routed this vacuum line in here, where the harness is for the transducer. And now I'm just gonna cut this vacuum line, put it right there. And we're good. So the regulator is all done. And that vacuum line goes over here into the back right there. Now I teed into this because I want to run a vacuum gauge / boost gauge. So that's going to go to that. And now all I have left is the map sensor. So I'm going to put a line over here and a small 3/16 nipple over here, and route it inside the harness and into the car. So I put the hose on the throttle body, I pulled it into the car, and this is ready to put on the map sensor when we get the computer here. Alright, now I'm connecting the brake booster vacuum hose, and we're good. So we put a 2-inch air cleaner on it, And we just have just about enough clearance with a 3-inch cowl on it. We have about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch clearance, so we're good. I'm also going to recharge the lid on top, make that look like new. And now I'm going to cut this air cleaner stud. This is from Dorman, part number 41066. And this was I got from Rock Auto for a couple of bucks. This is what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and put this in and make a mark here and cut it. Alright, so I put a nut on it and I'm just going to cut it right there. You just take the nut and you work it back and forth on the end over here to straighten out the threads. And we're good. Alright, so now we're going to put the computer together. And we have Mr. Computer Whiz, George, here. He's going to tell us what exactly he's doing here and what he got in his hands. What do you have there, George?
Well, this is the MegaSquirt 3 circuit board. Well, the MegaSquirt circuit board, version 3. And so, you know, when it comes, basically comes in a package with nothing on it. You want to make sure that you don't handle it with your hands because you're going to solder on it. So best thing is to just wear a pair of gloves when you first get it. Open it up. It's a good idea to go to the MS Extra website and pull up the most current manual. And what I usually do is I'll go through the entire manual and figure out what components I'm going to be using and what I'm not going to be using. And I'll just cross them off. And you know, as I install items, I like to basically cross it off my list so I know what I did. I also like to verify everything like resistors and capacitors, whatever you get in the package. It's always a good idea to check before you end up soldering onto your circuit board. It's time consuming, but it's worth the extra time to check everything over.
Okay, now to be clear, where do you go and get this from? What website?
Well, this is from MS Extra.
That, right?
Yeah, the manual is from msextra.com.
And the hardware?
And the hardware is from DIY Auto Tune, who sells they sell a bunch of MegaSquirt components.
And now this is the one you build yourself?
Yeah, this is the MegaSquirt 3 version that you actually build yourself, as opposed to the one that comes already pre-made.
And you could buy either or.
You could buy either or. This to me is a little bit more flexible for customizing yourself. Of course, you have to know how to solder, and you know, you learn more by building yourself. But obviously, you could do either or. But for me, this is the best way to go if you want to keep building as you go along, as opposed to paying up front for something that half the items you're not going to use, and then you know, possibly later down the road you're going to add stuff. Where this, you build what you need, and if you need changes as you go along with your build, and you want to add things like a turbo controller, or you know, a boost controller, or you know, launch controller, whatever you're going to do, you can just add it as you go along, as opposed to paying for everything up front. You know.
Great. And all this could be had on that website.
Actually, you know what? Let's take it out so we can take a look. I already started fitting some of the components. It's going to take time. It's going to take you a good amount of time, maybe like 3 or so hours to assemble it and solder it. But like I said, it's worth it. Here you can see we already started putting in the resistors and the diodes. And I'll from here, and then we'll start soldering in. You know.
So you're just going to cut those in the back and solder each one?
Yeah, you want to solder them. I believe manual recommends you solder the resistors and from the top, and then you can clip it off from the bottom once it's done. And you know, you just follow the instructions step by step.
Okay.
And you know, use a good soldering iron that you know you can get up to like at least 300 to 400 Celsius. You know, clean tip. You know, and good solder. Make sure you use a 60-40. I prefer leaded solder as opposed to lead-free, and you know, make sure that it has flux in it to make sure that you get a good, clean, easy flowing solder. You know, and that's about it. Should be coming along together nice.
Cool. So this is it, and George is going to do what he does best. Start building this bad boy. All right, so we are on DIY Auto Tune, and that's the kit we got. And George will explain what the kit comes with.
All right, so this is the MegaSquirt 3 version 3 unassembled kit that you buy from DIY Auto Tune. Basically comes with your circuit board. It comes with the MegaSquirt 3 PCB card that gets plugged in, the circuit card that gets plugged in.
That's the processor, or?
Basically your process, exactly.
Right.
This is your processor. It's a one of the most advanced processes out there for, let's say, FI systems, EFI, fuel injection standalone systems out there. It's very powerful ECU chip. I think the process chip is something like 50 megahertz times 2. So it's a dual processor.
Nice.
So it's got 100 megahertz altogether. You know, it comes with basically all your transistors, your resistors, you got your capacitors, chokes, and these are basically poly fuses. You have your LEDs, diodes, your DB9 and I believe DB27 or 37 connector, your map sensor.
That's a 3-bar map sensor?
This comes with actually 2.5 bar map sensors. That's good for, I believe, 22 pounds of boost.
Right.
Basically everything you need to assemble this for most setups in a non-sequential system, meaning that you won't be able to fire ignition coils and injectors sequentially unless you upgrade to, like, let's say another item which you buy is the MSX card for another additional $100, but that's really if that's what you plan on doing. Other than that, you'll get everything you need, injector drivers, everything you need basically to assemble the unit and put it together and get just about any vehicle you can think of running with this unit.
Cool.
It'll do anything out there that I know of. I've yet to see this ECU not be able to run anything out there, so it's a very powerful system. It'll do a lot.
From a drag car to a lawnmower.
Yeah,
it'll run it.
It'll run it. Yeah, it'll run it. It'll do it. And
cool.
You know, nice. You get some decals. You got your case. It's a very nice system.
Cool.
I prefer it. You know, I've used a lot of systems over the years, and very happy with the MegaSquirt system. It's always really done a fantastic job.
Cool. All right, so we're going to show you one component being soldered to the circuit board and how we go ahead and do that. So, George, take it away.
All right, so you want to basically just look at your diagram, find your package with your resistor numbers, and match the number on your board with the resistor you need to use. So, for example, we're looking at resistor R10, or R11, excuse me, down here. And then if you look at the manual, R11 is a 1 mega ohm, 1/8 watt resistor. All right, so that's 1/8 watt plus or minus 5%, okay? And then just take your resistor, set your multimeter to resistance, and just get a reading on it. So right here,
and this has to be off the circuit board to get a good reading?
Yeah, you don't want to test any component that's already soldered in the board or on the board. You want to make sure that's off, not in circuit, because it'll throw your values off. Mm-hmm. And as you can see on the multimeter, you have 966 ohms, which is equal to, you know, basically 5% of 1 mega ohm, so that's your 1 mega ohm resistor right there. And so then you can just fit it up, since you know you have the correct resistor.
And you go ahead and solder that, right?
Yep. And now resistors doesn't matter which end you put it in. I like to try to keep them uniform, so like I like to keep the strip of gold to the right. It's just, I like the way it looks. So, and the gold stripe is usually, you know, depending on the type of resistor as far as its quality is either going to be gold or silver or copper. And these are all gold, which is the better ones. And I like to put it in place. Make sure your soldering iron is up to temperature. Your tip is clean and tinned, which is fairly simple. And then just get your what you want to do is basically make sure that you're contacting the board and the resistor at the same time. So your copper connector on the board is actually being touched at the same time, and then basically and you can always, if you choose to, which I tend to do, but just for this example, I like to do one side first. I'd go up and around, that way I give it a little time to cool off, and then come down this side and work my way back to the first one that I soldered, just so that it gives the resistor a little time to cool off. So that way you don't overheat the resistor. You can always just put your finger on it, make sure it's not hot, and there you go. Alright, and if you see any residue left over, that's from the flux in the wire itself, in the soldering wire, and that's all that you're seeing right there. You can always clean that off later on once you're done. And once it's done, you can snip off your connectors in the back and you're all set.
Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and do everything else that's already on here. Alright, so it's pretty much done. Process is on there. It's in the box. Like I said, all the instructions are online, you can get them. And now we're just gonna load the firmware and put a base map on it. Alright, we're in the car now and everything is hooked up. We did a few things. We took the injector plugs off, we cranked it, and we put a time light on the engine to try to put it at 10 degrees before top dead center. We adjusted the TPS on the software. You just hold the pedal down, you grab the readings on it. It's very simple. Check to see if the coolant temperature sensor is working. It is. That's about what room temperature is here right now. And now we still have the injectors disconnected. And as we crank it, we're gonna take a look at the RPM signal. Alright, that's no good. It actually goes all the way up to 6,000. It should be like, I don't know, 300-400 RPM when it's cranking. So that means you have a lot of noise. You would have to either move the coil around, maybe it's causing interference, all this stuff that could cause some noise. And also, one more thing you should do is, over here in the computer, you should put a multimeter here on volt setting. One should go over here as a ground, and the other one should go on this, next to this pot right here. You should go to the top terminal right there, where we soldered it into the board, and you should have at least 2.5 volts with the ignition on. If not, you have to adjust these pots here to change the resistance, to filter out the noise coming in. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, so we're holding everything here, and it's 2.892. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn the pot. As you see, it's going down, so that should be 2.5. And this is what we're turning right there. And we're pretty close to 2.5. So it's a good starting point. We turned the pots as it was cranking too, and we took out most of the noise. We also took out some noise with the software. There's a noise filtering section here. You just move that graph higher up. And now I'll show you what it looks like with a good signal, cranking signal. It's pretty decent. We might still have to mess with it a little bit, but you get the point. Alright, I just want to show you guys real quick here. I put everything underneath the dash here. It fit perfectly. And let me see if I can get you guys a good shot of this. That's the MegaSquirt box. There's a module behind this and a bracket. I just zip tied it to it. And let me see if I can get you up here. That's what it looks like. And that thing's not going anywhere. So, once I put this panel up, can't see a thing. Alright, so everything tucked up nicely. I routed the USB wire all through here, and it's right there. So I can just hide it in the side over there and just pluck it out when I need to connect it to a laptop. Alright, so let's see if this bitch starts. I have to keep my foot on the pedal because we didn't set the idle yet. And I just want to see if it runs, so let's see what happens here. Let it prime a little bit. Yeah, baby! That's what I'm talking about. Woo! She runs! Alright, now that I know the car runs, I'm going to check the initial timing again. I'm going to fill the coolant up. I'm going to dial in the cold start. I also check to see if the iroc works and set the idle. And then take it for a little spin. Alright, so on the road now. George is over here tuning it. We're pretty much auto-tuning it now to get a base map. Then we're going to smooth it out later on once we get a good base map. We're also going to do the acceleration enrichment, which is pump shot on a carburetor. So I'm just going to drive it around and everything looks good. And we'll probably tweak the timing a little bit later after we do all that. So thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel, like me, share me, also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. See ya!